Time to clean up.
Ready? Okay. So I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order for Tuesday, April 11th, the evening session, 7 p.m. Can we have roll call?
Yes, Chair Fletcher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Here.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Still present.
Commissioner Dawson,
Here.
Commissioner Freeman,
Here.
Commissioner Latassa.
Here.
Thank you. That is a full commission present. And for city staff, we have Community Development Director Cole and myself, Recording Secretary Cleary. And I can also take this time to remind the public that members of the public are encouraged to join our meetings via Zoom Gov, a secure service that connects you live with no lag time. This meeting is also streamed live on youtube.com/City of Monterey with a 10-second delay and Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you would like to provide public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone, making sure to join in time to accommodate delays. To join the Zoom meeting from a computer or phone, use the link or phone numbers on the agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. Since the meeting has begun, you'll find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial 833-568-8864 toll free. Once again, that is 833-568-8864 toll free. If that number doesn't work, there are more listed on the meeting agenda posted at isearchmonterey.org. You will need the webinar ID for this meeting, 161-990-8039. Once again, the webinar ID for this meeting is 161-990-8039. If prompted for a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions for using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. To provide public comment via Zoom, please use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or to provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. Public commenters will be announced using their last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom. Public commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak. Please turn off TV or computer speakers or go to another room while connected, as background noise interferes with the broadcast. Public speakers will be called upon in order of hands raised. There's a 3-minute time limit for today's meeting. Please stay within that limit.
Okay, thank you. Since we took care of our consent agenda, we're going to continue on with public comments. At this time, the public may speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any subject which is within the jurisdiction of the Monterey Planning Commission and which is not on the agenda. Any person or group desiring to bring an item to the attention of the commission may do so during public comments or by addressing a letter of explanation to the commission. Anybody raising their hand?
There is a hand raised online. There is a phone number with the last 3 digits, 902.
Great.
I will allow you to unmute, and please state your name for the record if you feel comfortable with that. To unmute, you can dial *6.
Yes, this is Nina Beatty. I had gone online to get the agenda several days ago and downloaded it at that time. But when I went on today to look for the agenda, I could not find it on isearchmonterey.org. I did a search for recent meetings, couldn't find it there. I think that your staff needs to go to a computer that's not in the system and check the system to make sure that it's operating correctly, because there is no recent tab that I found from my outside computer. I was trying to get information to another person about the meeting, and they could not find the agenda at all either. So 2 people that are fairly educated could not locate the Planning Commission meeting agenda today. So I request, and I already asked this to the city clerk, that until the meetings are over, that the meetings stay up on the current page with all the other meetings, so that someone, say, coming into the meeting when it's already the afternoon session is over and they want to check out the evening session, they can easily find it on the page that's on the isearchmonterey.org. So this is, I've heard other people comment about this too, very difficult to find the agendas the day of the meeting. So this is an easy fix. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Anyone else there?
Thank you for your comments. There are no more hands raised at this time.
So Chair Fletcher, we need to take a 2-minute recess and just confirm that the agenda packet is available online.
Okay. I mean, I had problems accessing it. It said error. I mentioned that to Jennifer this morning about 3 times and then it finally appeared.
It
But
was a very large file.
yeah, it might be the same problem or not. I don't know.
So let's make sure it's been posted so we can just,
Okay, so we're going to adjourn for 2 minutes.
just 2 minutes.
Okay.
Or so. The agenda is posted online. We just accessed it. So I can just say the agenda is available online. It's also been posted in front of City Hall, as well as the the notices or the legal notices have been posted on site, so we can proceed. They're not posted at the library. They're posted at the clerk's office, the planning office door, and each individual site with the public hearing. There's notices posted on site, in addition to notices going out, mailed notices to properties within 150 feet. So that meets our legal requirements for public noticing.
Okay. So we'll move on to our regular agenda, item number 5, which is consider 2500 Garden Road use permit UP 230062 to allow modifications to an existing T-Mobile USA Incorporated personal wireless facility on an existing church building. The applicant is Andrea Kohatsu Raskop, the CBR Group Incorporated. And she's here on behalf of T-Mobile USA Incorporated. The owner is Shoreline Community Church of the Monterey Peninsula. Project is zoned IR 130 RAES MF and industrial general plan land use designation. This is exempt from CEQA for Article 19, Section 15303, Class 3. And is it Jerry's here? So Jerry, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Let me share my screen. I have a PowerPoint to share with you. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as stated, this is a use permit 23-0062. And the project location is 2500 Garden Road. You might recall that this site was the subject of pretty much a very similar project in December of last year. So this time they are proposing to retain 3 existing panel antennas, replace 3 existing antennas, and retention of 3 remote radio units and installation of 3 new RRUs, as they're called, and modification of ground support equipment. And this is same as in December, an upgrade of the facility from 4G to 5G. As stated, this is the Shoreline Community Church building. The applicant is Andrea Kohatsu Raskop with CBR Group. T-Mobile is the wireless carrier. And again, as stated, the zoning and general plan designation are both industrial for the property. This proposal is considered an eligible facilities request according to federal law, section 6409. So it's an existing wireless facility. Again, modification was approved in December of 2022. That has not been constructed yet, but I guess the technology is already being updated. So they're coming in with this request. And again, not a substantial change per FCC definition. The 60-day shot clock will end on May 27th of this year, 60 days. So as you may recall, this is the site plan of the building. There are some antennas in a shroud or box up on the roof in this location, on the building facade in this location, and down on the ground is the support equipment next to the building. Here's an aerial view to show it a little bit better. Here are the existing antennas on the building facade. Support equipment is down below over here, and this box is where the antennas are on the roof. So to show the existing and proposed, these are the existing antennas on the left. These are two on the building facade that will be replaced in the same location with the same FRP screen around it. Fiber reinforced plastic screen. This is the one on the roof that you saw in the aerial photograph. Again, antennas were replaced inside that box or screening facility. And these are the last two on the building. And again, a screen, FRP screen, and they will be replaced as well. The equipment layout, it's on the ground. There's some existing cabinets in this location. They will be replacing it with two new cabinets in the same location. It'll be screened by an existing fence that surrounds that support equipment area. So here's the elevation view of what is going on. Starting here is the support equipment on the ground. You won't notice any change there. Some antenna changes up on the building facade in this location. And then again on the roof, some swap out of some antennas in this location on the roof. So here's the view locations. I'm just going to show you view 1, because this is the most visible, and view 3, so you can see the box on the roof. So this is what it looks like now, or what was approved back in December. It will not change at all. The antennas will be inside these fiber reinforced plastic screening boxes in this location. And again, the support equipment on the ground. And then looking from view 3, this will look exactly the same, just putting in new antennas and replacing the old ones. So we had a radio frequency study, and the general public exposure limits will not be exceeded at the ground level, at the building, or any adjacent properties. The adjacent properties are a little distant from this property, and there's no buildings that are close by. So no story elevated structures are actually within 200 feet of the RF array from the replacement antennas. And the ground floor preschool, which is below on the ground floor in the front of the building, is way below the public RF safety zone or safety limit as prescribed by the FCC. Here's what the arrays look like coming out from the antennas. In this figure, the greenish color over here shows the public limit, and they go out horizontally from the building. And these are the ones on the roof that go out in this direction. And this is the public limit, again in green, and the occupation limit in blue. So just like all projects, we ask for an elevational view of the RF array. And here it's the opposite. This is the occupational limit, and this is the public limit. So no public limits will be exceeded below the roof level on this building. And as we do on all wireless projects, we do have some RF conditions I'd like to point out. A post-construction RF report will be required before they go into operation. Only personnel with RF exposure training can have access to areas near or in front of the antennas. The wireless carrier's contact information shall be available at the access points to the rooftop areas, which are secured in any case, and then signage, blue and yellow signage or caution signage shall be placed adjacent to all active antenna areas. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the permit amendment to UP 230062 with the recommended findings and conditions of approval. And I'm available for questions. The applicant is here as well, and I believe their RF engineer is in attendance too. Thank you.
Questions for Jerry?
Yeah, I do. Jerry, go back to the RF signals, if you would. The last one. Okay, looking at those two views. One of them is pretty broad from overhead, but from the side view, it's fairly narrow. Why is that?
It's just that in this view, you're cutting through the RF array. So it's from an elevation, it's like if you're standing in the parking lot looking up at one of the antennas on the building facade. That would be what it would look like. So you can't show it broad unless it's a 3D depiction. This is the site plan view. So that's why it's much broader. So, you know, if we had a 3D depiction, it would be a little bit different. So that's the difference.
Odd that if it's coming from one transmitter and it's directional, I understand that. Why wouldn't the signal be very similar from both the overhead or from the side?
I think it is in terms of this distance, actually, from 34 feet for the public limit, 15 feet for the occupational limit. So these depictions are correct. So if you went out from the antenna, that would be 34 feet out, and this would be about, what was that, 15 feet.
Yeah, but it doesn't, we're not seeing that. We're only seeing, there's 3 different colors on one, only 2 on another. That's why I ask. It doesn't make sense.
I see. This, I believe, is where the occupational limit is exceeded. So if there are workers working on these antennas, they would have to shut down the antenna because of the radio frequency or waves coming out of the antenna could, you know, be harmful to their health. So you're right, that is not shown in this one. It would probably be right there. And, you know,
That's why I said, I understand the light color is the
yeah,
most dangerous, then the 34. But how big, okay, if that shows 2 of the colors.
right.
How far out does the green one go?
That's the 34 feet right there.
Well, then what's the blue?
That it's just they used opposite colors for some reason. It's very confusing.
See, that's,
Sorry about that.
we get this, we get different colors almost every time. That's why I asked the question, because it doesn't make sense.
Well, also
That's a good
plan
question.
view, the plan, I don't mean to jump in, but go back to the plan view.
Yes.
See, that's going all the top part of the screen where the green bubble is, it looks like it's extending past the edge of the building.
Yeah, that's more than 34 feet.
Yeah, that's more than 34 feet.
So these figures don't make sense.
Yeah, this is what we were given. It was verified by a third-party reviewer, but you know, like I said, the RF engineer is here to explain it further if necessary.
So what was green on the next slide is blue on this one. And what
That's right.
blue on
That's
this one is green on the one with the red dots.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're not seeing the proper projection of these signals, because you're showing 2 on one and 3 on another.
Yeah, the third one would be right there.
Now the dangerous yellow zone.
Yeah, that's for workers on the roof.
I was gonna suggest that we leave that to the engineer to explain, because there's some.
Yeah.
Like 34 feet, clearly the green goes off to the end of the building, and so there's some discrepancies that I think the engineer can clear up for.
Maybe the applicant can explain when we reach that.
Yes. Any more questions for Jerry?
I have a few. Okay, sure. So, Jerry, can you go back to the photograph of that tower element? No, the other one? Yeah, there you go. Okay. So what is that window? It looks like there's a window in between the two sort of equipment boxes on the left part.
Yeah, I believe this is an access stairway that goes up to the roof.
Okay, so that's a window in the access.
Yes.
Okay. And can you go then to the elevations that were the drawn elevations of that same part? Oh, I see. So they drew elevations to the front. They didn't draw an elevation of the side, really. You know,
Yeah,
where the window is.
right. I think there is one in the plans, but this one's just a good depiction of what's going on there with the three
That's
antennas.
okay. And then the this is very nitpicky, but the front page of the plans, the main plans for this project, lists the owner of the parcel as AT&T. I assume that's an error.
T-Mobile.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
right on the front page, owner AT&T.
No, I believe it is the Shoreline Church in this case.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, maybe the applicant would like to share with us their thoughts. Jennifer, is the applicant online?
The applicant is online. Andrea, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks, Jennifer. As stated, my name is Andrea Kohatsu Raskop, representing T-Mobile for this project. Jerry did a pretty good job explaining the differences between the elevation and the aerial views of the emissions. I do have the EME expert, Dr. Gerald Bushberg, on the call as well, so I will let him speak to that. But if there are any design questions I can help answer, feel free to let me know. And then in regards to any future project that I do have with the city of Monterey, I will make sure to work with the EME vendor to make sure the colors coordinate from view to view. I understand how that was a little confusing.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Questions? for-
Maybe you could answer my question on the RF signal issue, why we have 2 visions on one and 3 on another.
I think it was an error to miss the occupational circle.
So,
Can you put that back on the screen, please?
there. So what is if that is 17 and 34 on the yellow and blue respectively, what is the green and why is it projected out so far?
I can't exactly speak to that. I did not personally complete the EME report, but if Dr. Bushberg could be unmuted, perhaps he could provide a little bit more insight.
He does have a hand raised, so I will allow him to talk. Gerald, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't know why the color was not consistent between the two. They should be. If you go to the one that has the larger lobes on it. Oh, you were just there, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so the edge, this is the yellow part here is where the occupational MPE is exceeded. And the blue, at the edge of the blue would be where the public limit is exceeded. And then if you look at the diagram or the legend rather for this diagram, you would have to scroll down a little bit, but the green represents much lower exposure levels. And here it is between 5 and 100% of the public MPE. The blue is 100 to 500% of the MPE. And then the yellow is 500 to 5,000 of the MPE. And these are for public, so you would divide by 5 for occupational. So for example, 100% of the occupational limit is at the end of the yellow here, and then the public exposure, end of the public exposure limit would be at the interface between the green and the blue. So the public is allowed anywhere in this green area. If it exceeds the 100% of the public limit as shown in blue here, that would require RF awareness training, as well as anywhere closer, like in the yellow, which is the occupational MPE limit.
So it's yellow in one and green in another, correct?
Yeah, it shouldn't be. That's an error on our part. And I apologize. It should be the yellow for the occupational. Yeah, go back to where you just were. This should be yellow, and then blue is correct, but this should be yellow or the green to correspond to the same color.
Thank you. And
Okay.
Harry, do you have any questions?
No, well, I do. Can you go back to the plan? So when I look at this, I look at the scale of the colors I'm looking at. I recognize that the colors are mixed up, and we're all smart enough to understand that with your explanation. But when you look at the blue on this, and that's supposed to be the 15-foot length on the section graphic, is that correct?
No, the blue would be 34 feet.
Okay.
The yellow is 15.
The yellow is 15, which appears as green, unfortunately, on the vertical pattern.
Jerry, could you go to that other?
So you're seeing the the two innermost
Yeah,
circles.
And we typically don't display on the elevation pattern unless someone requests it, lower exposures than the public exposure limit. It's just typically shown on the plan view to show you that if there was, for example, a building immediately nearby at the same elevation, we could then say, well, it's below our between 5 and 100%. We could calculate exactly what it was, but you know that anything in the green area is below the public MPE. And so if there was a building here, for example, you would say, well, okay, but we know by looking at it, even if it's the same elevation, it would be below the public limit.
And that was not included on that section that we were just looking at, correct?
Yeah, we don't normally place that larger pattern on the vertical, but basically it's going to be, it should be that green, public green, anywhere after the end of the blue here.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant or Dr.? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, apologize again for that. We'll make it right.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I guess now we could take it to public hearing. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this, Jennifer?
There is a hand raised, but just in case more people want to comment, the phone number to join by telephone is 833-568-8864. It is toll free. The webinar ID for this meeting is 161-990-8039. Once you are in Zoom, you can raise your hand using the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or to provide comments by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, then *6 to unmute when called upon. We will announce the last 3 phone number digits or the name typed into Zoom, and there is a 3-minute time limit. You should be on. Last 3 phone number digits 902.
This is Nina Beatty, and I wanted to know if the Shoreline Church representative is here. I have some questions. Does T-Mobile and their contractor and Shoreline Church have insurance with no pollution exemptions? Do they have EMF hazard insurance? Congress gave, excuse me. Congress gave at the FCC's first charge as protecting public health and safety in 47 USC 332A1, and taking actions to manage the spectrum to be made available for use by the private mobile services. The Commission shall consider, consistent with Section 151 of this title, whether such actions will, number one, promote the safety of life and property. And I want to remind you that what you've seen is just modeling. What does it mean legally that T-Mobile knows what this radiation does? Its own review of science in 2000 found significant evidence of harmful effects for humans and biology, and their review team in their report recommended changing national exposure limits to 1,000 times lower than FCC limits. Other countries have lower limits in place, and children are more vulnerable. T-Mobile's response was bearing the report. When you don't disclose to the public that their product is potentially defective, and you convince the public to buy something that may hurt them, doesn't that constitute fraud and deceit? I'm just an ordinary person. Maybe that kind of conduct is okay under the law. CEQA has nothing to do with the FCC. CEQA stands on its own. So if there's a hazard or risk, it should be disclosed to the public. This project is not exempt from CEQA. It's a polluting project with a very large footprint, and there are sensitive receptors using this building and nearby areas. I also wonder if these actions by the church, service provider, its contractors, and the city of Monterey as fully knowledgeable permit grantor, their actions could constitute willful negligence, criminal neglect, or even child abuse. Microwaving children. Shoreline Church didn't respond to the information I sent them in December. With plenty of time to research, they could have stopped this. Money must be too important. I wonder, I remember that the Christian Bible, King James Version, says, suffer the children to come to me. Or did it say, make the children suffer when they come to me? There's a preschool on site. And in the Bible, I recall the penalty for harming children is supposedly worse than hanging a millstone around a person's neck before throwing him into the ocean. Making children suffer, destroying their future, people dodging legal responsibilities under color of law by cherry picking. You've already blocked my access as a disabled person to Highway 68 by willfully ignoring state and federal laws. The least you can do as a commission, and I implore you to do so, is to prohibit the antennas facing these children's schoolroom and play area. That's the least you can do. Those children trust adults to do the right thing. Do you care about children? Do you care about children? This is your choice to make a decision for these children. At least prohibit the antenna that faces their outside area in their classroom.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. There are no further hands raised in Zoom or in the council chamber.
Okay, so we will bring it back to commissioners for review and consideration.
A question for staff.
Yes.
Is this a 6409 project?
Yes.
I have a quick question. Does the airport have any say in the location of these cell towers, the airport commission?
So the Airport Land Use Commission reviewed our draft ordinance and came up with specific conditions of approval that they want to see on permits. And that is permit condition. Let me just find the conditions of approval. Basically, what they're requiring is every application, the carrier files an application with the FAA. And the FAA then, so they have to submit to us a copy of their application and a copy of their approval from the FAA. And that shows on packet page 54, items 12A, B, and C are the conditions of approval through the Airport Land Use Commission that enforces the FAA rules. And
I think that the next item has a requirement for FAA. Yeah,
they all do
item
now.
6, they all do,
They all do.
even though they're not in a zone.
Correct. So the Airport Land Use Commission was pretty conservative when reviewing our ordinance, no matter where it is in the city. The applicants are required to submit this application to the FAA, and then the FAA provides us back this notice. And then we require that prior to
And we've
issuance.
gotten that notice in these cases.
Mhm.
Okay.
In the last, I mean, this has been fairly new. This has been in the last 3 to 4 months. But that's one of the outcomes of our new ordinance that actually goes into effect in about 25 days or so. But we started implementing it now.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, Mr. Chair, I have no problem with this application. It seems pretty clean. It is that 6409 number. And I think the boxes on the side of the building are pretty ugly, but it is an industrial site. It isn't really in the public view. I don't think the aesthetic considerations are, enough to make me think that that's, I would oppose the project. So I'm in support of it.
Having gone through this process for quite a while now, I am sensitive to the public's concerns. And so when something like this comes in and it all of a sudden it shows a different color of concern, I think we need to be careful that one of the things we covered and extensively during the subcommittee was the areas that we would have these things, but also a checklist to ensure that everything was covered so that you could say, you're not ready to come forward or not. When I see things like this come up, where I'm looking at all these pictures and all of a sudden a bell goes off, this doesn't make sense. Then it needs to be pointed out to the applicant earlier so that they can correct it before it comes to us. It's taken up us about 20 minutes just to get over these issues of color and bringing in the applicants. So I don't know. And also, we're going to your question, Terry. I've asked in the past if we could have on this first paragraph, at the end of that, maybe a 6409A qualified project, because that would also notify the public that this is a 6409 project, because the ones that are concerned know what 6409 means. And the other, if it doesn't have 6409, trust me, we're going to have more people here. So it might make it in their interest and in ours to have 6409 on the caption so that we understand it and that the public can understand it. Thank you.
Sandy, I'm going back and forth tonight.
I'm in agreement with everybody, and I think that the applicant should resubmit at least one of the pages of the application so that the colors are coordinated.
And the scale is shown.
Yeah.
So that, if 34 is 34 in that one drawing, doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
It's 134 if nothing.
I suspect that, a lot of this type of work is done with renewal of equipment and whatnot, but it doesn't do the application any service whatsoever to provide information that obviously is wrong, even if it's something simple like color. It affects their credibility. And this is fairly common on these applications that come before us. Last one was the Marriott, where things weren't right. You have a comment?
Yeah, I think the engineer mentioned that in the table below the graphic, that we didn't see, it did show the correct color code associated with the warning area that was being described, but there should be some type of standard. You would think that for hazard would be red, for warning would be yellow, for not a problem would be green. I mean, I think you could use something with the public that's a common color denomination that would make a lot of sense.
That would be logical.
Well, maybe. Well, it's hard when you produce a lot of these reports to be able to keep track of it all. But if you had a standard color set designation for hazard,
But practice makes perfect.
yeah, then you just use that in every one, and that would be my recommendation. It says use the standard red, yellow, green. Everybody in our community knows what that is. I think I prefer the church steeple one better. I mean, I think that was so far one of the better ones that we have looked at. But I agree with Terry. I don't see any reason just because it doesn't look really aesthetically nice, but next because it's in a industrial zoned area.
All right, anybody would like to make a motion, Terry?
Sure.
make-
Just a comment. So I interpret these two drawings. There's an elevation and a plan view. And I think it's clear now that that blue shape, the 34-foot blue shape, is consistent on both the plan view and the elevation view. What's missing from the elevation view is that big green thing that goes beyond the building. They didn't show that. They only showed those two innermost sort of bubbles. So I think it is consistent. They certainly could have used the same colors on both drawings. That would have helped, but the blue is the same on both.
The shapes were, I mean, the signal intensity was showing correctly and the distances were correct,
Right.
but the colors were off.
Well, no, the
It's the blue one.
I mean, here I am making a motion, but the 34-foot dimension on the elevation was blue.
Another one's yellow.
No, actually, in the plan view, if you look carefully at it, that blue thing scales about 34 feet and the yellow one is about 15. The blue one looks like it's a little more than twice as big. And then that green thing is just, not even shown in the elevation. I digress. So let me back up and all I was trying to say was that I feel like they could have done a better job on the information, but they are basically consistent, especially that blue shape and the yellow shape. So I'll make a motion to approve item number 5. Consider 2500 Garden Road use permit UP 23-0062 and per the conditions and findings on the staff report.
Okay, we have a
I'll
motion.
second.
Mike Braswell was giving it the second. Any additional conversation? Hey, Jennifer, can we do our roll call vote, please?
Chair Fletcher,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
Yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Latassa.
Yes.
Thank you. This vote was unanimous and the motion carries. It is appealable with forms found at the planning office within the next 2 days.
Okay. Thank you.
Numero siete.
Next on the agenda is item number 6. Consider 200 Glenwood Circle use permit UP 22-0223 to allow a modified AT&T mobile wireless facility. The applicant is Beth Broussard, TSJ Consulting Incorporated, and the owner is P. Mahoney Limited Partnership. Zone is planned community zoning district, medium density residential, general plan designation, and this is exempt from CEQA for Article 19, Section 15303, Class 3. Okay, Jerry.
Yes. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. As you know, this is another wireless application. I'm sharing my screen for the PowerPoint. Can you see that now?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. So this is for use permit 22-0223. The location of this project is adjacent to Cabrillo Highway, number 1. And this property is accessed off Glenwood Circle. It's a residential senior community in this location. two buildings, basically. Now, for this one, they're removing 7 of the existing 11 panel antennas and installing and replacing 10 antennas and modifying the support equipment. Now, the ownership is P Monterey LP. The applicant, as stated, is Beth Broussard of TSJ. This is a AT&T mobility facility. This zoning is planned community and it's in the medium density residential zone. This is an existing facility. And again, as pointed out, this will be a 6409 application. And yeah, we'll definitely make that clear in the staff report and presentations moving forward. So again, existing facility. Some of the commissioners might recall that this was a previously approved modification in June of 2021, about 2 years ago. So again, not a substantial change per the FCC definition. There's a 60-day shot clock that ends on May 28th, 2023. This is a site plan of the building where the existing facilities are. These are where the approved antennas are on the sides of the building facade. They are modifying it, and I understand these are not constructed, but are proposed. They are going for building permits in a month or two. This is where some antennas are on the roof. The support equipment is behind a screen. And then on the northwest side of the building, there are 4 antenna boxes or fiberglass reinforced plastic screens around the antennas. So this shows kind of how the antennas are arrayed on the building facade. Again, there's 3 of them, and some will be replaced. They're on a screen on the roof, and those will be replaced as well. It's easier to see on the elevation. Support equipment on the roof, and then these are the 4 on the northwest building facade over here. So this is the northeast elevation with the 4 antennas, and they will be replacing some existing antennas. In some cases, they're doing 2 smaller antennas. So they kind of almost add up to 1 antenna, but they'll be replaced with 2. In other cases, they're replacing with 1 antenna, as you see over here. The remote radio units are behind the screen over here. They're depicted in front. And again, same case here on the southwest elevation, where they're replacing what used to be 1 antenna with 2 smaller ones. A new antenna over here, as well as a new antenna on the building facade in this location. And this is the screening, the screen on the roof. It screens not only the wireless support equipment, but there is some other equipment for the building behind the screen wall as well. And there's some existing antennas on there, and they're replacing 1 antenna, as you can see, with 2 smaller ones, new antenna over here. And that's what's being proposed on the roof. So here's the view study. We do have a view looking at the northeast elevation. And this is what the antenna boxes that were approved in 2021, and again, will be used for this application on that building facade. Same thing on the southwest elevation, very similar boxes in this location. You can see that as you're driving up on Glenwood Circle towards the building. And then we do have some views that were taken from Highway 1, but it's really not visible. There is a berm, some dense vegetation, and you cannot see the building or the antennas on the roof or on the building facades from the highway. And that's really in a B, C, and D over here. So we did have the radio frequency study and found that the general public exposure limits will not be exceeded at the ground level. And there are residential units below the roof, so they won't be exposed to any excessive levels at that location. And all RF arrays are oriented again horizontally away from the building. And we had them very carefully look at the 7th floor, which is right below the roof, 6th floor and 5th floor, to see what the public limits were. And they'll be at 17.55% of the public limit on the 7th floor at all those units, including the outside balconies, 4.83% as you go down to the 6th floor, and 0.76% on the 5th floor below that. Now, I realized we had a little bit of an issue on the previous application with the RF arrays. I think this one is a little more consistent. So we do have the public limits, or I'll start with the occupational limits right there. And the public limit in yellow and the public limit is in blue. This is for the antennas on the roof and on the building facades. Now here is what their elevational views look like. And I just want to point out, I'm not defending the RF engineers, but this is one of the only cities that requires this type of view for the RF study. So they're all kind of struggling to, come to terms with how to do it. So we're breaking new ground with these elevational views, and I think they're very helpful. But these ones do match. This is the public limit, which is blue, just going back, blue. The yellow is the occupational, and then this is the red over here again, showing the danger limit for workers on the roof. So this is what the array looks coming off the roof. This is what the array looks like coming off the southwest elevation. I put this box here because there is a building that was proposed or is maybe under construction in this location. It was concerned with the previous application that there be no exceedance of the public limit at that new building, and that's approximately where that building will be located. And then this is off the view from the southwest. This is the other side of the building with the correct depiction of the colors and the arrays. So again, just like most projects, we do require a post-construction RF report to ensure that it is depicted exactly as shown on these drawings and in the RF report. The only personnel with RF exposure training can have access to areas near and in front of the antennas. The wireless carrier's contact information shall be available at the access points to the rooftop areas. And then blue and yellow caution signs shall be placed adjacent to the active antenna areas. So again, with that, we do recommend approval of UP 22-0223 with recommended findings for this decision and conditions of approval. And similar to the other project, I'm available for questions. And then the applicant and their RF engineer, I believe, are online as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Questions for Jerry? Yes.
Thank you. The percent of dangerous RF, that's at the present frequencies. When we go up in frequency, doesn't that also go up? So if we're looking at 1755 now, what's it going to be when it goes to 5G?
Yeah, I can elaborate. This is with the 5G, actually with the improvements. And we made sure that they, with the 5G, that they don't exceed those public limits. That's very important down in the residential units.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
I guess I have a few, Jerry. So can you go back to I guess do we have elevation drawings with the same sort of RF diagrams?
This is what they used.
Okay,
for
so
this
there
one.
aren't really the elevation drawings. It's a photo montage.
That's correct. That's correct. And like I said, these companies have never heard of doing this before, so they're kind of, they're all different companies. They're all trying to depict it as best they can.
Okay. Now, can you go back? There's one of them that shows the balconies and the relationship between these boxes and nearby windows on the 7th floor.
Yeah, I think this might be the best one right there.
No, there's another one that's in fact, I don't think it shows the diagrams. What I'd like to do is look at the photo that shows the boxes on the side of the building. I think it's right above yeah, there we go. Okay. And then there's another photo of the same thing without the boxes, right? So there
Yeah.
are no boxes there now. They want to put these boxes up there. Correct.
Correct.
So like, what is I assuming if you look at the two boxes on the upper right, just to the left of that box on the left is a window that's an apartment window, right? It's one of the units.
Correct.
So what is the distance between the edge of that window, do you think, and the edge of that box? Maybe 3 or 4 feet or something?
Correct. Yeah, that appears to be right.
Okay. And that is a box. And so I didn't see anything there that showed the relationship between those balconies, especially the balcony at the 7th level, and especially that, I guess it's that more serious yellow sort of, I think you call it the occupational zone.
Yes.
So anyway, is there anything in there that demonstrates the relationship between the red and yellow bubbles and those balconies?
This is probably the best depiction. My understanding is that the arrays go out in a horizontal manner directly from the antenna, don't go back into the building. So,
okay. Well, I guess, I hate to be too picky. Go back to the picture then of the boxes with the there. Yeah,
let me go up here.
that one. Yeah. So, I mean, if somebody goes out and smokes a cigarette on that 7th floor balcony, are they in a safe zone? How do we know that they're not getting their brains fried when they're taking their 7th puff?
Professional term.
Mhm. No, we made sure that the percentage of the public limit that was shown on the screen on another slide takes into account not only the units, but the balconies as well.
Okay. And are there any drawings here that demonstrate that?
Well, again, it's probably best to shown here that it goes out from the building. The
Well, that's where
balcony
those
would be,
boxes are. That's where that photograph was taken.
yeah.
To me, like that signal goes sideways, does it not?
Yeah, it goes sideways out. It doesn't go into the building at all. This is where that balcony would be right there.
Really?
Correct. And then most of the array goes out in this direction.
Huh.
These are the antennas right there.
Right. So my understanding of it is between the 5 and the 1, those numbers. So look at the 5 and the 1 and those little sort of lighter blue bubbles. So just keep that 5 and 1 in your mind. And now go back to the photograph of that elevation. The other one that shows I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Up here.
Okay. So yeah, so that one, so the 1 and the 5 is like it's along that elevation, right?
Correct. There's 5, there's 1.
Right. So you can see there's a balcony there right in the middle that's sticking out. It looks like, am I wrong, or is it projecting from the building 3 or 4 feet?
It looks
I
like
bel-
One big step and you're done.
Yeah, that's the staircase. I think, emergency
Okay, is
staircase.
that
going in.
projecting from the building? It looks, or am I totally mistaken here?
Right there.
There it is.
Yeah,
projecting
okay, it
from the
does.
building.
Yes, okay. So I just want you to demonstrate to me, go back to that other one with the colored diagrams and imagine that little 3 or 4 foot projection of the balcony and how it relates to that yellow and red shape.
There you are, smoking a cigarette.
Yeah. So again, that would be down below this. And
No, it's not.
um,
Well, maybe a little bit.
yeah, a little bit below. And
It's a solid.
yeah, it goes out in this direction.
Okay,
So-
yeah, sort of see them. These are very strange photographs. They're all kind of they have like a some weird
So Jerry's right, all the RF engineers are having a really hard time depicting the vertical. They can do the horizontal, they're used to that. The vertical depiction, they're really struggling with. So since we have the RF engineer hopefully online
okay,
and they calculated it by floor,
right.
maybe we can just have them respond because I mean, the graphics, it's really hard. It'd be
Right.
sort of ideal if an architect could take this portrayal and put it on the elevation drawing in a tree
Yes,
section.
well, like the previous application
to-
actually had a drawing with, if they had a plan view and an elevation view of the building in drawing with these
Yeah.
colored bubbles.
Some of the RF firms are not there yet.
Right.
They're really
Yeah.
struggling with the vertical
Okay.
portrayal.
Well, I think this demonstrates why it's a good idea to have this information. So we
Yeah.
can sort of carefully look at this. So anyways, in your opinion, Jerry, you looked carefully at these balconies and you considered them safe.
Yes, and I particularly pointed this out to our third-party review engineer. We have a third party that looks at these reports independently and asked if it was safe for the balconies, for the, especially the units inside, and they confirmed that.
Okay.
So that's very important to us.
Okay, and then I guess the last question would be, I think there is a sound study included in this package.
Yes.
So these boxes, are they humming? They're 3 feet away from a window of a unit. Is there a noise they make? Was that the analysis?
Yeah, my understanding it's not so much the antennas, maybe the cabinets or some of the support equipment back in this area.
Okay, so these things that are projected, the boxes that are, what do you call those boxes? They're antenna box shields, really.
Yeah, a shroud or a fiberglass reinforced plastic shroud, FRP screen.
They don't really make noise.
No.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question of Jerry as well. On the, looking at those pictures, are we going to do a test before they turn them on or as they turn them on? So that someone standing on that deck would, if they had a monitor, they could tell you what the RF was?
So
Yeah.
one of the conditions of approval is that prior to turning them on, or just as they do a test and they submit a supplemental RF report to confirm that their mathematical projections are roughly what is seen in the field.
But nothing is better than someone standing there with a monitor.
Well, the RF, they're going to go out and measure it.
That's why I asked.
As it-
because
yeah.
If they're just
Yeah.
looking at calculations and say we're right, well, that's
Yeah.
the
No,
same as standing there
They'll have
with
to
a,
compare them to their original calculation.
thank you. That's all I'm asking. Thanks.
With the monitor. That's right.
And I assume the tenants on the 7th floor of this building were notified of this.
Correct. We made sure that the notification went to all the residents from the.
Okay. And they aren't like condos, they're actually like tenants. They're renting.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, are we ready to talk to the applicant and engineer? Jennifer, are they available?
Yes, there is somebody named David Wichkowski. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I'm commissioners. And Jerry, I'm the RF engineer that has been retained for this project. There's also the applicant is online, Jennifer Preston.
Any questions?
David, what's the side lobes that are coming off these antennas? That's one of the things we really haven't seen on any of the previous presentations, but given the balcony that we're looking at and the deck, some of the side lobes, and any leakage that's coming from the antenna, has that been assessed in your study?
Yes, there are a couple things going on here. The side lobes and the building have been assessed. The balcony has been assessed. We went back specifically to readdress this, as Jerry pointed out, to answer that question. I would also like to point out that the flat plot, the roof plot that you've been looking at is the roof level. There is a 7th floor slice that is not shown. If you can give me presentation, I can show you that 7th floor slice, or Jerry, I could email you the PDF and you could show it. But we specifically went floor by floor to look at the levels to show that what you see in that roof slice looks worse than what the 7th, 6th, etc. floors are going to experience. And it also, our analysis takes into account a variety of other elements that further reduce the impact to residents. Jerry, let me know if you want me to send you something or if you have that PDF. There should have been the revised EME that was generated a couple days ago.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that.
Do you want me to email it to you?
No, that's okay. Let's see.
Looks like 8 floors.
Let's see.
There we go.
Bingo.
Yes. So, commissioners, the previous plot that we were looking at was shown at the 66-foot level, which is the rooftop. Looking at the 7th floor level, which is 14 feet down, or 15 feet down from that, you see that the levels are greatly attenuated, and that the blue does actually just. I mean, if that 9 datum bubble were removed, it would not actually be touching the building.
These are compilations of all the antennas, right?
Yes, yeah. All EME analysis takes into account aggregate impacts. And it's important to understand when looking at EMEs that these are worst case scenarios. So in other words, they take into account perfect ground reflection, which of course doesn't exist in real life. So when we do the post-installation report, if I were to come out with my calibrated meter, it will always be lower than what the EME is reporting. These are absolute worst case scenarios that are never realized in real life. So if we say that it's 17% worst case, it's going to be lower than that in practical terms. And it's important to also remember that inside a building, there is a reduction of power by a factor of approximately 10, depending upon the construction. So if it's 17% impact outside the building, when you're inside the building, first of all, you're behind the antenna. So the energy is being directed outwards. But even that 10% reduction would bring that down to 1.7% of the public limit, or better than that due to imperfect physics in the real world. I hope that answers the question.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike.
On that one illustration, it shows the antennae signal going across the roof.
Mhm.
If someone is in that room, activates their phone, would it hit that antenna?
The phones typically latch on to whatever resources are available to it at the moment.
In that room just below that antenna?
Well, certainly it will try to latch on to the best signal. Now, if that antenna happens to be busy servicing another phone, it might latch on to a different signal. It could, in fact, not latch onto that antenna for a period of time.
I understand that, but one of the issues when we talk about the power of your antennae is that if you're standing directly below it,
Mhm.
even through a roof, how much of that signal is going to reach that phone?
It's a small amount. I mean, it's certainly going to have a signal, but it's not going to be exceeding the FCC's limits.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the three boxes that are, I guess, 5, 7, and 9, sort of on the bottom of this page. Those are, horizontal boxes painted the same color as the walls of the building. And they stick up above the roof, and they also stick down below the roof. Looks like 4 or 5 feet.
Vertical boxes.
Yeah, vertical boxes. So could they have been put? They chose that location obviously because it's it's advantageous for where they're trying to get their signals. Could those boxes have gone somewhere else, like on the roof? On top of the roof instead of on the side?
I wouldn't want to second guess the network engineer on this. Typically, when you design a system, you try to get as much separation between the antennas as possible. And the reason why you do that is because antennas on one side of the building can potentially talk to the other antennas, and it creates a cross interference, which degrades the performance of the network. So if you can see from this design, they're actually trying to keep the antennas as far away from each other as possible, and that's the reason that I'm guessing that it was designed this way. Certainly, they could be placed closer together. If you look at a freestanding macro tower with, say, 3 sectors, they're of course closer. They're also 120 degrees separated from each other.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Everybody finished with their questions? No, Sandy.
There is another applicant on the line raising their hand.
Okay, I think we're ready for that.
Okay, Beth Broussard, you should be able to unmute.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to the chairman and to the commissioners for considering our project. We are trying to do an upgrade of equipment and offer the 5G service. As Jerry mentioned, I think, Jerry, you did an excellent job presenting our project. The one thing I did want to point out is that these antenna boxes that we've discussed now a lot will be in place already when my project is ready to be installed. We're just simply swapping antennas out and swapping RRUs. So it should be a pretty quick install. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Okay. No one else, Jennifer?
No other hands are raised. I think those were the only applicants
And no
online.
one in the council chamber, so we'll bring it back to commissioners. for discussion?
We do need
Sorry, Mike.
to
I have
provide public.
a
comment.
question for Jerry.
Did we not open it for public comment, Jennifer?
We did not announce public comment. We only heard from the RF engineer and the applicant.
Oh, so if anyone would like to make public comment on this project, please raise your hand.
And there is a commenter online. Last phone number digits 902.
Okay. Jerry, just so I got the numbers right.
So
No, I think there's.
Oh,
There's a
there's-
there is a
comment.
public comment.
Sorry, Mike.
I do.
Would you answer the questions first, though, before we get to public comment?
No.
They are not allowed to provide their own comments until after we receive comments from both the applicants and public commenters.
Well, they were going to ask questions, so now this is eating into my time. Again, does AT&T, the contractor in Park Lane, have insurance with no pollution exemptions, and do they have EMF hazard insurance? The statements being made by AT&T's contractors don't make sense, that there's no reception or limited reception inside, where we were specifically told the last time that there was, these were for reception inside the Park Lane, and we know that the antennas do put energy back behind them into a building. The balconies are a huge problem. And I'm mystified that only one phone at a time can connect to a cell tower. That it just it just defies belief. That there is no 3D spray pattern shown for these pictured on these designs. The industry has been installing cell towers for 25 years or more, and our ordinance has required cumulative exposure and visuals for at least since 2018, and they're still stuttering and saying, well, they can't quite get it right. I don't believe that. It doesn't make sense. This is a discouraged location, and yet the city is encouraging that this expansion can continue. 6409 projects still have to comply with existing law, and I don't hear that being talked about. I want to go back to the FCC guidelines versus the T-Mobile expert recommendations I talked about in the previous application. And there was disagreement between the RF staff report or the RF report and the slide. Compared to the T-Mobile expert recommendations, residents on the 7th floor would be getting 175 times their recommendations of exposure. And on the ground floor, it would be over 100 times the maximum exposure of what the T-Mobile experts said people should receive. CEQA does apply with trees and other habitat, wildlife, and elderly people, some in poor condition. These are sensitive receptors. Birds will be exposed to the high radiation zone that these antennas are putting out. Was a NEPA environmental review done on this project, especially since it is part of the AT&T network that the Naval Postgraduate School, we now discover, is going to be utilizing for their project. So it's also kind of a federal project. So NEPA should have been done on this network. As again, 47 USC 332A1, Congress said that safety of life is the FCC's #1 priority. And I'm still seeing this ignored and other parts of federal law, this cherry picking. Section 601C1, no implied effect, and Section 414, remedies not exclusive, it affirmed other local, state, and federal laws that are not short-circuited by 6409As. You've made Swiss cheese of the law, cutting out parts of the law, and the only explanation is because it benefits the applicants. ADA is in the Telecommunications Act, including Section 255, access for persons with disabilities. My disability increases because you allow this company and this applicant to invade my home and conduct their business through my home in the public spaces and in the public rights of way, even though I'm a disabled person and protected. ADA and fair housing apply to your decisions when they affect me as a disabled person in my home. And the city shows it knows this and its responsibilities because it has reworded my testimony in hearing minutes and agenda reports and deleted my references to ADA and fair housing repeatedly. I testify this merely to put this in the record once again. You're doing this, and that discrimination endangers my life. and the impacts on the trees and the birds and the creatures, that is, CEQA is absolutely what has to be complied with. But you are
Nina, thank you very much. Okay.
No más.
Is there anybody else on the phone
Yes.
for public comment?
No other hands are raised.
Thank you very much.
And
Can I ask one more question of staff? Kim, these boxes on the side of the building were approved before,
yes,
right? So they're just switching out the equipment inside previously approved hideous boxes. Okay, thank you.
I still have my question for Jerry. Going back to the numbers. As I read this, it started out with 10. They're reducing 7, adding 10 more. That makes 13. So we've increased by 3 the number of transmitters. And that's all under 6409.
That's correct. Some of the antennas are smaller antennas. As I pointed out, it's taking out one, putting in 2 smaller ones in place.
Thank you.
Iron freaks are small.
Yeah, and if under 5G, I assume that they can use smaller antennae.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I said once before, if these antennas were the size of a pack of cards, we wouldn't care. But they're not. Not even close.
who would like to share their thoughts?
It's funny though, I think the Jerry and the applicant have gone to a lot of work to show the RF exposure situation. But this is I don't know, man, those boxes are right next to those apartments. It's I'm not crazy about this application, but we're always under duress to approve these things or we're going to get sued, you know. So it's a frustrating, this application is frustrating for me because I feel this pressure to approve it, even though it's ugly and it's right next to these apartments on the 7th floor. So I resent the process. Really ugly, but we've already somehow, I guess we approved these, or the ARC, somebody approved these big ugly boxes on the side of this building. So it's funny, we can't really reasonably object to the aesthetic part because they've already been approved, the aesthetic part of it.
Well, the difficulty that you're seeing is that they're ugly. The difficulty I'm seeing is that they're so damn close to that window. How could it not be radiating through the window?
Oh, no, I have a problem with that too.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying our only, you know, after we've been through so much of this, our only real legal reason for denying an application is on aesthetic grounds. If it's been demonstrated, obviously, if it demonstrates that the RF limits are not safe, then we would have grounds on that matter, but they've apparently.
Here's the question. What if the boxes look like blisters? Like rounded instead of squared. Would that be better? Would that be better for you for the aesthetics part of it?
I don't think so. But the problem is they've already, these boxes have already been approved.
I know.
So we can't really
They're
unapprove.
already there. They're already.
Are they there?
They're already there.
They're
Oh,
already
okay.
there.
Okay.
They're just taking out the guts.
Right.
And putting in new guts.
Yeah, so I don't know how we can reasonably, you know, oppose this on aesthetic grounds because those boxes are already there.
Well, the engineer did say that they're going to measure the RF at the balcony and I'm assuming at the window when the system operates. So we'll get a good measurement.
Yeah.
I'd love to see those reports.
Well, I think they'll submit them to staff.
Yeah.
So if there's some issue with that, I think we would just need to rely on the system to be able to provide the information. But
Yeah.
I think the issue is that they're gonna make the measurement. And so I think that should at least mitigate some of the concerns until we find out if there is a problem. And then I think these antennas are all phased array, so they're planar antenna that's propagating outward. I did ask about the side lobes, and that's where you get some of the radiation looping around on the antenna. And if they've looked at that and there's no side lobe, then I think it's unlikely that you're going to have any propagation going into the window. Or the balcony might be a little bit more of an issue, but hopefully they'll have their meter and they'll be able to measure it.
I guess we could, modify that one condition that requires the post-project RF report to focus, to make sure they include the balcony, that 7th floor balcony and windows.
Those windows that are right there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just to make sure that that's included. Maybe we should include that in the condition.
On all of the directionals in this particular project, because there's different sites.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, whatever they're gonna use to make the measurements and pick up anything coming off of any of this.
Right.
Any other comments? Anybody care to make a motion?
Okay. That we approve. Consider 200 Glenwood Circle. Use permit number Union Paul 220223. To allow a modified AT&T mobility wireless facility. With the condition so added that they test the direction as part of the closing of the permit.
On the 7th floor balcony and
The 7th floor
Adjacent
balcony,
windows.
the part of that closing report to the city.
right.
Also,
Additional conversation about this? Okay, Jennifer,
Chair Fletcher,
yes.
Vice Chair Bluth,
yes.
Commissioner Brassfield,
Yes,
Commissioner Dawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Latassa.
Yes,
Thank you. This project is approved and it is appealable to the city council with forms found at the planning office in the next 2 days. Sorry, 3
3
days.
Okay, moving on.
Jerry?
Yes, thank you, Jerry. Moving on to commissioner comments.
actually, Kim's report.
That's coming up.
Okay. I have one.
Okay,
Tonight, we had a discussion about today about a new project going down by El Estero. And it keeps coming back. Terry made a comment today about it, that we're going to be getting into an area that may be within 7 years impacted by sea rise. We have still not studied it enough to put a conditional boundary on the areas that may be affected in that time period. I think that the city has some liability if we don't notify people and we approve a project today, that in 7 years, if there's an impact, then we are opening ourselves up, because the state has already notified us with certain projections of where area is going to go. So we need to consider that and look at, okay, this should be a cautionary area. That for planning purposes and development,
Oops.
particularly the way the state wants us to start development, that we need to pay attention to what we're doing.
Kim, how do we further this conversation legally?
Well, one of the
No.
things that we can do in condition and come into your comments and make suggestions for study. So
Okay, right. So how could we further this?
So,
Because we've talked about it
And you
before.
heard it here first.
so you're right on point. So the housing element update is coming with a safety element and land use element update. The safety element, we're required to update all our hazard maps. And so there's 2 issues affecting that area. There's the flood zones, there's the sea level rise, and the worst of all of them are the tsunami run-up zones that even go further into that area. So the planning commission will be ultimately making a recommendation to the city council on the safety element. You're very much going to be considering where to put new housing and where we should potentially rezone properties. So all this is coming together in the next 7 to 8 months. Right now, we have and we have to have it adopted by the end of the year by state law. So they give us like 12 months to do it. So we just extended our public input survey for another 30 days. And we sent out another mailer to every property owner and renter mailing address in the city. We sent out 11,000, I think, notices the first time around. And this time we know we have closer to 13,000 housing units. So we're using a second list. And right now responses are ranging, well, last Friday, I think they were around 500 responses have been received. So the public's opining about, based on the safety areas, where they want housing to go. So all of this summer is going to come together for you, and you'll be looking at it in the safety element, land use element, and the housing element. Ultimately, the general plan will be amended, and that will trigger amendments to our specific plans, which I think is what you're pointing at, is that we need to amend all our documents to show our current safety zones that are different than the ones that we depicted. Gosh, I think we last updated them. Well, the fire hazard zones have been changing regularly. So anyways, they're getting more severe. So we will be showing you that.
Well, there also, Sandy and I met with the city manager last year and discussed maybe an overall integrated sea level rise thing that needs to happen. We were convinced to keep our mouths shut until we get our coastal program revised. We don't want to ruffle any feathers in Sacramento. That was what we're doing. So verbal, we're waiting for the we're going to be, underwater saying, is that coastal plan finished yet?
And I might point out that this city of Monterey is also looking at replacing the youth center. I think the cost like $10 million. Do we want to do that with water at the foundation?
Which youth center?
Monterey Youth Center
Dennis the Menace,
down in El Estero.
Oh, yeah.
because that would be the first place hit.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole Pandora's box that we're going to jump into with everything else going on. I know the city only has so many staff, and they're trying to get all this housing element. That's the first priority right now. Yeah. Well, I didn't realize that safety element was part of it. So.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments?
The value of a good provider for the all of the stuff for the general plan. We're not going to invent that here.
The city's hired Diet and Bhatia, who's preparing our general plan update. If that's what your question is regarding provider, they're using state and national data sets that are pretty well developed now.
Good.
On the safety. So the state fire hazard maps are adopted. The airport land use maps are adopted. Tsunami zones were just updated. Our FEMA zones were updated about 2 to 3 years ago, and then there's sea level rise projections on top of those. So we're using the best science that exists today. That may change in 5 years, but it's what exists today.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, informational reports and staff comments.
I don't have anything to add to my written report. If we will have a meeting, but it'll be pretty short at the next meeting.
Okay.
And then, but get ready this summer. We're going to have some long hearings.
What's the date of the next hearing?
I believe it is 4:25.
Okay, that concludes our meeting this evening. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.